The evening hung heavy with tension, a prelude to the storm brewing in our living room. "What do you mean she's moving in tomorrow?" I asked Greg, my voice barely containing the shock and anger. Greg didn't even flinch. "It's decided, Elise. Mom's coming to live with us." "It makes sense, especially now," he replied, his tone resolute. "How can you make such a decision alone?" I countered, feeling the walls of our home closing in on me. "What about our plans?" Greg wore that all-knowing look, the one that always set me on edge. "We'll convert your home office. It's the only logical solution," he said, dismissively adding, "You don't really need it. Besides, I pay the rent here, $3,000 a month. That gives me a say in how we use the space." I was stunned. This house, the one my parents had passed down to me, now felt alien, controlled by Greg's financial hold over it. "But this is my family home," I whispered, more to myself than to him. Greg's voice was cold, devoid of the warmth I once fell in love with. "Your family home or not, I'm the one footing the bills now. Get your stuff cleared out by tomorrow." That night, I couldn't sleep. The realization that our marriage was a facade built on the shaky grounds of financial power and silent submission hit me hard. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my office being emptied. Marion, Greg's mother, arrived with her suitcases, an unwelcome guest in my own home. In the days that followed, the tension escalated. Marion's presence was overbearing. She rearranged the kitchen, criticized my cooking, and worst of all, subtly belittled me in front of our daughter Mia. I felt like a stranger tiptoeing around my own life. Greg became more distant, his conversations curt, his nights late. Our home, once filled with laughter and shared dreams, now echoed with the sounds of unspoken resentments and forced politeness. One evening, I overheard Greg and Marion discussing finances. "Elise doesn't contribute much anyway," Marion scoffed. "She should be grateful we're letting her stay." I felt a surge of anger. This was my family home, a place of cherished memories, now being reduced to financial transactions and power plays. The next morning, I confronted Greg. "I want to talk about the rent," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. This was my family's home. I never agreed to pay rent. Greg's response was a mix of arrogance and indifference. "Well, things change, Elise. I'm paying the bills, so technically, it's more my house than yours now." That was the moment I knew our marriage, a delicate balance of love and compromise, had crumbled under the weight of control and disrespect. I called my father, Nolan, my voice shaking. "Dad, I need your help. It's about Greg." As I hung up, I realized that this was just the beginning. I wasn't going to let Greg and Marion turn my life into their dominion. They might have underestimated me, thinking I'd crumble under their control, but they were wrong. I was my father's daughter, and I knew a thing or two about standing my ground. Sitting in the empty room that used to be my office, I couldn't help but reminisce about the early days with Greg. We were like two pieces of a puzzle, fitting perfectly with our differences. But now, those differences were tearing us apart. I remembered our first date, how Greg's laughter had echoed in the autumn air, how he had looked at me as if I was the only person in the world. It was hard to reconcile that memory with the man who had just usurped my family home. My phone buzzed, pulling me back from the past. It was a text from my father, Nolan. "All right, I'll take care of it. Meet me at the shop tomorrow." Nolan's auto repair shop had been a cornerstone of my childhood. It wasn't just a place of business. It stood as a testament to my father's hard work and dedication. Much like our family home, the shop held memories of a life once brimming with warmth and togetherness. The next day, I stepped into the familiar scent of oil and metal. Dad was beneath a car, his hands moving expertly as he worked. "Dad," I called out. He slid out from under the car, wiping his hands. "Elise, let's talk in the office." The office was a cozy space adorned with trophies from car shows and framed family photos. It encapsulated happier times. "I can't believe Greg is doing this," Dad said, his eyes reflecting a mix of anger and concern. "I know, Dad. I think it's time for some payback," I replied. Dad nodded, a determined look crossing his face. What do you have in mind? I want Greg and Marianne out of the house. But I want to do it legally. Make them feel the consequences of their actions, I explained. Dad leaned back in his chair, pondering. We can draw up a rental agreement, hike up the rent, make it impossible for them to stay. I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. This was the first step in reclaiming my life, but it also meant declaring war on Greg and Moran. Let's do it, I said, surprising even myself with the resolve in my voice. Over the next few days, Dad and I meticulously crafted the rental agreement, a strategic plan designed to legally corner Greg and Moran. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction imagining their faces when they would see the new terms. Meanwhile, back at the house, Moran's true colors began to shine more vividly. She complained about everything from the way I dressed Mia to the brand of coffee I bought. Her words were like needles, subtle but piercing. One evening, I overheard her on the phone. Yes, I've finally got a lease under my thumb. This house will be ours soon. Fury and disbelief coursed through me. How could she be so callous, so manipulative? But her words also steeled my resolve. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting Mia from this toxic environment. The day arrived to present the rental agreement to Greg and Moran. I walked into the living room, the document in hand, my heart pounding. Greg, we need to talk about the house, I said, my voice steady. As Greg's eyes scanned the pages, I saw a range of emotions flicker across his face. Confusion, disbelief, and finally, anger. This is absurd. The rent's been raised tenfold, he exclaimed. I said, meeting his gaze, it's the market rate for this property. If you can't afford it, you'll have to find somewhere else to live. Greg's face turned red, his anger palpable. You can't do this to us, he protested. I can, and I am, I replied, feeling a sense of empowerment I hadn't felt in years. This is my family home, Greg. You've forgotten that, but I haven't. The days following the presentation of the rental agreement were a blend of silent battles and open confrontations. Marian's true nature, once hidden under a veil of polite intrusion, now emerged in full force. One evening, I was setting the table for dinner when Moran entered the kitchen. Her eyes quickly scanned the room, landing on the simple yet nutritious meal I had prepared. This is what you call dinner? She scoffed. Back in my day, we knew how to provide for our families properly. I clenched my teeth, forcing a polite smile. It's healthy, and Mia likes it, I defended. Marian snorted, dismissing my efforts with a wave of her hand. Children don't know what's good for them. It's up to us to teach them. Clearly you lack that understanding. Her words stung, but I remained composed. I had learned that reacting to Moran only fueled her disdain. As the days went by, Marian's presence became more oppressive. She criticized my parenting, my housekeeping, even my choice of clothes. It was as if she was deliberately trying to provoke me. One afternoon, I returned home from a quick errand to find Mia in tears, and Marian sitting calmly in the living room reading a magazine. What happened? I asked, rushing to comfort my daughter. Your child is just being fussy as usual, Moran replied without looking up. I don't have the patience for such nonsense. I held Mia close, feeling a surge of protective anger. How could she be so cold towards her own granddaughter? Later that week, I had a meeting with a potential client for my small business. Marin, could you please watch Mia for a couple of hours? I asked, hoping for a bit of cooperation. Moran looked at me, her expression one of annoyance. Fine, but make it quick. I have plans later. I returned from the meeting to find Mia once again in distress. Moran was nowhere in sight. After calming Mia down, I confronted Moran. Where were you? I trusted you to look after her. Moran rolled her eyes. I had to step out for a bit. She was sleeping anyway. What's the big deal? The big deal was that Marian's selfishness was now affecting Mia, my most precious treasure. I realized then that Moran would never change. Her contempt for me had spilled over to Mia, and I wouldn't tolerate it any longer. I called my father that night, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and determination. Dad, it's getting worse. She's not just targeting me now, she's neglecting Mia. Nolan's response was swift and resolute. We need to speed up our plan. It's not safe for you and Mia there anymore. The following day, I observed Greg and Moran whispering in the living room, their heads close together in what seemed like conspiracy. What are you two plotting now? I asked, a hard edge to my voice. Greg looked up, his expression feigning innocence. Just discussing some financial matters, nothing for you to worry about, he replied. But I knew better. The rental agreement had unsettled them, and now they were scrambling. I could almost smell their desperation, a scent that, under different circumstances, might have been satisfying. Instead, I felt a cold resolve settling in my heart. They had underestimated me, thinking I would crumble under their pressure. But they were wrong. I was ready to fight back, not just for myself, but for Mia. The battle lines were drawn, and I was no longer a passive player in their game of control. I was about to change the rules entirely. Every day in the house felt like walking on a tightrope. Marion's presence loomed large, a constant source of negativity. Her comments were like thorns, pricking away at my patience and resolve. One evening, as I put Mia to bed, I'd overheard Moran speaking to Greg in hushed tones in the living room. Elise is not fit to be a mother. She's too soft, too indecisive. You need someone who can actually run a household efficiently. I stood frozen, listening to their conversation. Greg's reply was a weak agreement, a betrayal that cut deeper than any of Marion's sharp words. The next day, I confronted Greg. Do you really think I'm a bad mother? I asked, my voice shaking. Greg avoided my gaze. It's not just about being a mother, Elise. It's about being responsible, about being adequate. The word echoed in my mind, a stinging indictment of my role in this family. As the days passed, Moran's manipulations grew bolder. She rearranged the furniture to her liking, disposed of items she deemed unnecessary, and took over the kitchen, effectively pushing me to the margins of my own home. One day, I came home to find Mia crying inconsolably. Moran was in the kitchen, completely ignoring her. Why aren't you attending to her? I demanded, my heart racing with worry. Marion shrugged, a cold detachment in her eyes. She needs to learn to soothe herself. It's part of growing up. That night, I called my father, my voice a mix of anger and desperation. I can't do this anymore, Dad. Greg and Marion are destroying everything I hold dear. I need to get out. Nolan's response was immediate and firm. You and Mia come stay with me. We'll sort this out. I hesitated. Leaving the house meant giving up the fight, but staying meant subjecting Mia and myself to more torment. The decision crystallized the next morning when I found my personal belongings boxed up in the garage. Marion had decided they were cluttering the house. That act of violation was the final straw. I packed our essentials, taking one last look at the home that had once been a haven of love and happiness. As I closed the door behind me, a sense of relief washed over me. I was leaving behind the oppressive walls of that house, but I was also stepping into the unknown. Staying with my father brought a sense of peace. Months had passed without the warmth I once knew, but Mia's laughter filled the house once again. However, the battle was far from over. I sat with my lawyer to discuss the divorce proceedings. I want full custody of Mia, I stated firmly, and I want the house back. The lawyer nodded, recognizing the gravity of the situation. We'll build a strong case. You have rights. As the legal proceedings began, I realized this was more than just a divorce. It was a fight for my identity, my daughter's future, and justice against the tyranny of Greg and Moran. Greg's reaction to the divorce papers ranged from shock to anger. You're making a mistake, Elise. You won't win this, he warned. But I was resolute. I had endured enough. It was time to reclaim my life and protect my daughter from the toxic environment they had created. I was no longer the passive, accommodating Elise. I was a mother, a fighter, ready to take back control. The divorce proceedings became a cold, calculated dance of legal maneuvers and emotional confrontations. Greg's shock quickly turned into bitter determination to fight back. In the lawyer's office, I review the contested custody and house claims. He's contesting the custody of Mia, I said, disbelief lacing my voice. The lawyer nodded solemnly. He's also challenging your claim to the house, but we have a strong case. As the legal battle ensued, my resolve hardened. This was no longer just about leaving a failed marriage. It was about standing up against the injustice and manipulation I had endured. In the midst of this, my father and I finalized our plan for the rental agreement, a strategic move designed to legally compel Greg and Marian to vacate my family home. One afternoon, I arrived at the house to deliver the new rental terms. Greg and Moran awaited me, their expressions a mix of defiance and curiosity. I handed Greg the document, watching his face as he read through it. "This is ridiculous. You're increasing the rent to an exorbitant amount," he explained. "Yes, Greg," I replied calmly. "That's the market rate for a property of this size and location." Moran interjected, her voice shrill with panic. "You can't do this to us, Elise. This is our home." "No, Moran," I countered, standing my ground. "This is my family home. You and Greg have made it clear that I'm not welcome here. So, if you wish to stay, these are the new terms." Greg slammed the document on the table, his anger palpable. "We'll fight this. You won't get away with it." But behind his words, I sensed his fear, the realization dawning on them that they were losing control. As I left the house, a bittersweet feeling enveloped me. Reclaiming my home was a significant step, but Mia's abandoned toys in the living room reminded me of the personal cost of this battle. The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal appointments and emotional upheaval. I clung to Mia, her innocence and love anchoring me in the storm. During one of the hearings, Greg's true colors came to the forefront. "Elise is unstable, Your Honor," he claimed. "She's not fit to be a sole custodian." My heart pounded as my lawyer countered his baseless accusations with evidence of my stable income and loving relationship with Mia. In a subsequent meeting, Greg's lawyer proposed a settlement. Greg is willing to relinquish his claim to the house in exchange for joint custody and a reduction in the rent, he said. I hesitated, torn between the desire to end this battle and the need to protect Mia from Greg and Marian's toxic influence. But then I remembered Mia's tears, Marian's callousness, and Greg's betrayal. This was about justice, setting an example for my daughter. "I refuse," I said firmly. "I will not compromise on Mia's well-being or my family home." The decision to continue the fight was difficult but necessary. I was no longer the woman who tolerated disrespect and manipulation. I was fighting for my rights, my daughter's future, and the dignity that Greg and Moran had tried to strip away from me. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready for whatever came next. The day of the final confrontation arrived like a storm on the horizon. Armed with legal documents, I stood at the doorstep of what used to be my sanctuary, now a battleground. Greg opened the door, his face a mask of defiance, Moran hovering behind him, anxiety evident in her eyes. "What do you want, Elise?" Greg asked, his tone icy. "I'm here to finalize the arrangements," I said, handing him the updated rental agreement. As he read, his expression shifted from confidence to disbelief. "This is absurd," he explained. "You're demanding a rent that's beyond unreasonable." "It's the market rate for a property of this size and location," I replied steadily. "If you can't afford it, you'll have to vacate." Marin stepped forward, her voice trembling. "You can't do this to us. We have nowhere else to go. That was your choice when you decided to push me out of my own home," I said, meeting her gaze. Greg slammed the document on the table. "We'll see what the court has to say about this. You're not going to get away with trying to evict us. This ceased being your home when you chose to disregard my rights and my feelings," I retorted. The air thickened with tension, the once familiar living room feeling like a foreign land. Memories flooded back, but now it was just a shell housing bitterness and betrayal. As I turned to leave, Marian's voice stopped me. "Elise, please, we can negotiate. There must be a way to resolve this," she pleaded. I paused, considering her words. Then, with a resolve that surprised even me, I said, There's nothing left to negotiate. You made your decision when you chose to side with Greg against me and Mia. With that, I walked out of the house, leaving behind the echoes of a life that no longer existed. The days that followed were a mix of relief and uncertainty, but my resolve never wavered. Eventually, the court ruled in my favor. Greg and Marion were given a month to vacate the property. The news hit them like a tidal wave, washing away the last vestiges of their control and arrogance. As I stepped back into my family home, now empty of their presence, a sense of peace enveloped me. It was not the peace of victory, but the peace of justice served. I walked through each room, reclaiming the space that had once been ours, mine and Mia's. The walls that had witnessed so much pain now stood as silent sentinels to a new beginning. I knew the road ahead would be challenging, with wounds to heal and memories to reconcile. But for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of hope. I had fought against the odds, stood up to the tyranny of Greg and Moran, and emerged stronger. This was more than just a legal victory. It was a reclaiming of my life, a testament to the strength I never knew I had. The dust had settled, the legal battles were over, and the once turbulent house was now calm. As I stood in the empty living room, the memories of what had transpired echoed in the silence. Maya played in the corner, her laughter a balm to my weary heart. Watching her, I realized that this struggle, though fraught with pain, was necessary. It wasn't just a fight for a house. It was a battle for our future, for our peace. The day Greg and Murray left, I saw a glimpse of realization in their eyes, a dawning understanding of the consequences of their actions. Moran looked back at the house, her expression one of loss and regret. Greg, defeated and subdued, didn't meet my gaze. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I returned to my small business, finding solace in the familiar routine and the support of my regular customers. Mia thrived in the newfound stability, her resilience a testament to the strength of our bond. One afternoon, as I was closing the shop, a familiar face appeared at the door. It was Greg. He looked different, the arrogance replaced by a certain humility. Alas, he began awkwardly. I wanted to apologize for everything. I listened, a mix of surprise and skepticism. "Why now, Greg?" He sighed, a deep, weary sound. "Losing the house, the divorce. It made me realize how wrong I was, how much I lost because of my pride and my mother's influence." I considered his words, the years of pain and struggle flashing through my mind. "Your apology doesn't change what happened, Greg, but I accept it for Mia's sake." Greg nodded, a look of relief passing over his face. "Thank you, Elise, and I'm sorry truly." As he walked away, I felt a chapter of my life closing. Greg's apology didn't erase the past, but it offered closure, a finality to the turmoil we had endured. In the months that followed, I renovated the house, turning it into a home once again. The walls were repainted, the rooms refurnished, and new memories were made. It became a sanctuary for Mia and me, a place of healing and growth. I'd often sat on the porch, watching Maya play in the yard, reflecting on our journey. The challenges had been immense, but they had also revealed a strength I never knew I possessed. I had stood up against injustice, fought for my rights, and reclaimed my life from those who sought to control it. In the end, this was more than just a story of revenge. It was a tale of empowerment, of rising above the trials and tribulations to forge a better future for myself and my daughter. The house, once a battleground of conflict and manipulation, was now a haven of peace and hope. It was a reminder that sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most rewarding victories. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the yard, I held Mia close, grateful for the journey that had brought us here. We had overcome, we had triumphed, and we were finally home.